Okay, so this is really an outro and an intro, which means that it's kind of the end of the first section of part one of Orot HaKodesh of Rav Kook. So Orot HaKodesh is divided into four parts, four books really, and each book has a bunch of different subsections. So we're just kind of calling this, we just finished section one, which was called Chachmas HaKodesh, and now we're about to start section two, which is called Ichud Hanistar v'Hanigla, which means, so we're just going to explain kind of what we just outroing from or introing towards, which is that Chachmas HaKodesh, if you've followed the videos for the first section, basically the whole concept really was about how there's a whole set of ideas or a sort of a way of thinking about the totality of the system of ideas that exist, and how they all kind of connect to each other. And when you learn Chachmas HaKodesh, so the word Chachma really means like a set of rules that applies to a particular system. And when you talk about Chachmas HaKodesh, it really means a set of rules that applies to the perspective of reality that kind of comes from the outside of reality. If you want to try to get your mind around everything and sort of see how everything kind of fits together inside of reality, so you have to kind of operate from an outside place. Chachmas HaKodesh means the wisdom, the rules, the set of principles that really kind of define or encapsulate the whole entirety of all of reality. So we tend to have a hard time thinking about things like in that way. It's sort of like going all the way to the outside of the system because we're so inside of our own lives, inside of our own system. It's kind of like trying to think about your own body sometimes. You don't even pay attention to so much that goes on inside of your body or around you, and there's so much data that we miss, information that we miss about what's going on around us. Not just in our immediate vicinity, but to actually understand the totality of the rules and how this whole place works. So there's really a lot of parts that get more often ignored or underrated, and that's really what we spoke about a lot in the first section, which was about a lot of the intangibles. And that's really because that's sort of dealing with the intangible realities that are not physically measurable in the way that we're used to thinking about scientifically, but are still very, very real. Just like the core example was always the self, because the self expresses itself like this. This is right now, it's really just a conglomeration of cells moving, but there's something that is behind that. There's me, the self, that is immeasurable and undefinable and intangible behind that. And so that's really what a lot of Chachmas HaKodesh was kind of trying to sort of highlight, that there's all these parts that need to be understood, and certain ones of them are kind of more visible than other ones. And when you learn in a way that is taking all the different principles of Chachmas HaKodesh and all the other Chachmas kind of in light of that, in other words, the ideas of biology or physics or science in different forms, and all the different human sciences also, just that when you're able to learn all these things in light of Chachmas HaKodesh, then you can really see where all the parts fit, and then it's kind of like everything starts making sense and working a lot better, which is really every advance in science comes from that almost very often incidental integration. Like, for example, Albert Einstein figuring things out, he had to like integrate a bunch of new ideas that really were outside of what he already knew, and they were part of the larger system. And that's what kind of led to a big inspirational breakthrough with that caused a very different pathway to be taken in the world of physics. If you think about that also in terms of modern physics, there's a lot of kind of like analogous structures that really kind of resemble or resonate, or kind of like they just trigger reminders of a lot of the concepts of Chachmas HaKodesh, because it's getting so deep and so broad that now it's actually getting to a place where the Chachma of physics is actually encompassing a lot of the principles of the actual Chachmas HaKodesh, because we're getting to a point where we're digging now so deeply that we're getting close to actually penetrating to the world of intangible, what's underneath everything. So that's where we're outroing from. And now we're introing into this next section called Ichud HaNistar v'Hanigle. Literally means the unification, from the word Ichud, from the word Echad, oneness. HaNistar usually translates as the hidden, v'Hanigle, and the revealed. And so that's really talking about trying to unify that which is hidden, that which is revealed. But if you recall from the earlier series, the first section of Orot HaKodesh, so the concept of something which is hidden, Torah's Hasod is one of the terms usually used, which means like the Torah of secrets, like the secret Torah. But secret Torah here doesn't really mean that it's something which you don't tell people. It's something which we actually can't tell people, because trying to describe that which is experiential, which is undefinable in terms of you can't really put it into words. So it's kind of like trying to describe what peanut butter tastes like. All you can do is say that it's analogous to something else, or that's comparable to something else. Well, it tastes like peanuts. Well, what do peanuts taste like? If you never had peanuts, so then, well, peanuts taste kind of like almonds maybe, or like some other kind of thing. And then it's constantly, you're trying to constantly describe it in terms of how it relates to a different experience, and so you can't actually directly describe that which is experiential. That's really what the nistar includes. It means all things that are completely intangible and indescribable. Experiential, internal is maybe another good word to use, just because that whole realm of experiential or indescribable really takes place in the inner space of what it means to be a person. Because on the outside there's things that we sense, but like all the sensations of those things are going on in here. Like I feel it, I'm the one feeling it. So on the outside there's things that are happening, but like the experience of it is taking place on the inside, the inner space of the person. And so that's really the intangible. That's really that's one of the examples of that. Possibly the most directly experienced example of the nistar is the whole inner space of what it means to be a person. And the Torah and nistar is really about trying to understand that whole internal structure of what it means to be a person in the inner space, and then seeing how that kind of plays out in practical, real ways on the outside, which is the nigle, the revealed side. So here, Yichud HaNigle and Nistar VaNigle is really trying to reference what we described in the first series, like the process of taking the intangible and having it slowly translate down into the tangible, until eventually it's manifests fully physically, fully tangibly, fully measurably. So, again, using the same example and analogy, if I'm waving, so you're now kind of seeing the external manifestation of the internal, experiential, intangible side of things. So what you're going to do is you're going to sort of see this, and then in your mind you're going to say, well, that hand is moving. I know that when my hand moves, that's me doing that. So I can assume that's so too, just like that's what it is for me. When I look at you waving your hand, so that means that now there's someone behind that hand movement who's now waving to me through that hand, and there's someone there. So you're kind of tracking from the physical hand all the way up through the layers of intangible till you say, oh, there's someone, the most intangible, the one who's behind that. You're tracking it up through the nervous signals all the way to the level of the thoughts, and then going into the perceptions that are underlying that, which tell the person that this is how you say hello by waving, and then you go all the way to the most intangible, which is the person itself, the seat of consciousness, which is the self that is behind all of the perceptions, thoughts, and emotionals or nervous signals or chemical signatures that are going on inside the body, physiological signals. And so that's how you basically track that, but that's all kind of one seamless thing. It's like you don't do that consciously. You're just going to say, oh, that guy's just waving at me now. And so that process of kind of just registering that guy is waving is actually Ichud HaNistar VaNigle, because it's saying that guy, which is an endless, intangible, indescribable, undefinable self, is waving, doing something completely physical, measurable, and tangible. And that's this whole, you're basically describing a process of intangible becoming tangible in one instant. So you're unifying it by doing it that way. You're seeing it as one whole unit, one holistic reality, instead of looking at it as like, oh, look, there's like a series of nerves firing, and now there's a hand moving, which are all based on cells that are tied to muscles. And so you don't do that. You just automatically unify that. And so that's how you do that with each other. And then the question is, how do we see that with the larger world also? But that's really what this whole section is about, the process of sort of understanding the oneness of the nigla and the nistar, how they are part of one seamless whole. And so this is the intro phase. And so we just outro from section 1 and introing into section 2 now. And the next video will be dealing with Perek Yudalid, which is the next section, and it's called Tviyas Ha'Ichud Ba'Ruchani. We'll talk about what that means in the next video. Looking forward to seeing you.